Hey everyone. So, we have a lot to talk about. And I know there's many variants of dealing with the multiverses because Marvel Comics has a multiverse, DC Comics, Image Comics, and various other comics organizations have their own multiverses. But I want to focus on Marvel's multiverse because with the recent events of different multiverses from the TV series and the movies, it's going to be incredible. So I'm going to keep it short and keep it condensed at the same time. So I'll talk about the future multiverses from DC and Image another time, but I'm going to focus more on Marvel just for a few moments. But I would like to call this Marvel's Infinite Crisis. And it's a playoff from DC's Infinite Crisis because as a kid, growing up reading the comics and collecting them, basically, I've always been a fan of infinite crossovers and multi-dimensions and multiverses. Like, what would happen if an alternate character from a certain universe meets with another character in the same universe? Like, for example, I have a lot of dream crossovers too. Like, what would happen if the Avengers meet the biker mice from Mars? That would be pretty sweet. Or if the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles finally meet Spider-Man. And I'm actually surprised that hasn't even happened yet because they're both set in New York City, but in alternate universes. Considering the fact that they basically are in the Big Apple and they're not too far from the heart of the Big Apple, I'm surprised they haven't even met yet or hasn't been confirmed or no one's done a crossover yet. I actually saw an article from CBR. CBR is a good one, by the way. They talk about all types of comics and DC and Marvel and everything else. So I would recommend follow. I'm sure most of you've already followed them already, but check them out. They're really great. But I'm surprised that hasn't even happened yet, and I've always wanted to see that as a kid myself. So, but yeah, but think about something like that, or how about this is already done, of course, but my favorite crossover will have to be the family of Quahog, the Griffins, meet the family of Spring USA, the Simpsons. Peter Griffin's family and Homer Simpson's family. That was pretty cool. That was actually one of my favorite crossovers. It was one of my favorite crossovers right next to the Flintstones meet the Jetsons. That's actually pretty cool too. Also, another crossover will be DC comic characters meeting Hanna-Barbera comic book characters. And I'll get to that in the future too about like crossover companies that pretty much come together to put all these characters together. It's basically a fan outcry of what if. And speaking of what ifs, that actually deals with crossover events too. What if with dealing with multiverses and different decision makings of heroes and villains. Like for example, with the recent What If episode, that's dealing with like a multiverse catastrophe too. So, and what if it's really good? And of course, Uatu the Watcher has always been my favorite character. So, him breaking his oath is going to be pretty interesting because with Watcher Code, they're supposed to observe human events, but they never interfere. But to make the long story short, we're going to talk about WandaVision because WandaVision pretty much deals with multiverse events. Of course, WandaVision, it's about Vision and Scarlet Witch. They were honorary members of the Avengers and they have their own adventures. And of course, elements from WandaVision takes place actually from the 1980s comic book series Vision and the Scarlet Witch, in which of course they get married and have their own kids and have their own adventures. And to make the long story short, the reason why they had their own series was because Vision and Scarlet Witch wanted to take a reprieve from the Avengers. So what happened was, while the Avengers were away on the Beyonder's planet called Battle World through the Secret Wars series, the first Secret Wars, mind you, when the Avengers were away on the Beyonder's planet Battle World, Vision was trying to take over the world in a sense. He wanted to try to become the big brother of sorts. And he had good intentions. His intentions were noble, but they were also questionable at the same time. Because think about it like this, you want to get access to people's personal information and you want to try to take over the federal government. So that kind of gives me 1984 vibes, which that was already done. So after when the Avengers came back from Battle World during the first Secret Wars, when they were getting word that Vision wasn't himself, they confronted Vision. Vision came to his senses, and he started to feel remorse for what he did, and he wanted to take a leave of absence from the Avengers. And Wanda, being his better half, wanted to join him. And so they set off. They took a leave of absence from the Avengers, and they wanted to try and start their own life together, have their own families and everything. So that's kind of like what happened in WandaVision, which they did a really good job of taking elements from the comic books and add it to the MCU, which is what they do anyway. They take elements from the original series from years past, and they would bring their own spin to it. And that's one of my favorite parts of the MCU. So even though some of them are kind of questionable, but I get it too. But this actually the best part about it. They will take elements from the comics and add their own spin to it. So what happened was is that Wanda created her own world because she was basically grieving. She was hurting really bad because what happened to Vision in the events of Infinity War. And then when Wanda finally confronted Thanos at Endgame, Thanos, of course, had the line, "I don't even know who you are." And Wanda, with a blank stare at her face, was like, "You will." And that actually sent chills down my spine already, you know? But that's what happened. She wasn't really seen until after the events of Endgame and her final confrontation with Thanos, not to mention the epic team up with the women of Marvel Comics too. Girl power all day. The girls killed it. So I was actually happy for that and so psyched about that. And of course, Captain America finally holding Mjolnir. But that's another story in itself. But what happened is with WandaVision, this story takes place 3 weeks after the events of Endgame. Wanda creates her own world. She takes Vision's body from a S.H.I.E.L.D. counterpart called S.W.O.R.D. It's an organization. She actually took Vision's body and resurrects him and started to create a world of their own. And there are a lot of elements, especially the settings, that takes place from various sitcoms such as I Love Lucy, Bewitched, Growing Pains, Full House. There's like a time skip of every year. There's a time skip of every year of the decades of the different shows. So 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There's like a lot of times. I think it was like a Partridge Family reference too, but basically it's just time skip of everything. So, but they end up having 2 kids, go by Wiccan and Speed. And of course, Wiccan and Speed, they're going to play an important role. And of course, I've heard from Eric Voss from New Rockstars. He's a great guy, by the way. I know most people follow him, but for those that haven't heard of New Rockstars, I will basically give him a subscribe because he's really good. I've been following him for a long time, and he's good at what he does. Not to mention Comics Explained, Thomas Jefferson. That's a good one, too. I've been following him for a long time, too. Shout out to my boy Thomas and the crew from Comic Park. Sam, Ethan, Sal, and Sam's wife, Tiffany. Yep, you guys rock. Sal, you guys rock. So yeah, give a shout out to them too. They're good at what they do. So, but as far as that concerned, like that's pretty much what happens as far as like just that particular reference and everything. So, Wiccan and Speed will have an important play. And like I said with Eric, when he was talking about New Rockstars, Eric was saying that they're supposed to be coming out with a Young Avengers movie that's supposed to be in the works. And Wiccan and Spear are supposed to be members of the Young Avengers. So there's going to pretty much be like an introduction to them. We probably won't get them until probably the next 3 years. But I've got Marvel Studios on my app and on my messages. So I'm sure I'll get notification and news messages of when they're going to drop the movies and everything. But yeah, they play an important part. And then, of course, there's also the main antagonist of WandaVision, Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness actually plays a crucial role in the comics, too. She was good friends with Mystique, and she's also a confidant of Reed Richards and Sue Richards because their son, Franklin Richards, is actually one of the most powerful. He was pretty much considered to be a mutant, but he's also one of the powerful members of the Fantastic Four. And she pretty much becomes his guide. So she plays a huge part in not only the comics, but in WandaVision too. So, and of course, Loki deals with multiverses, crossovers as well. So with Loki, the heroes were trying to go back to 2012 to retrieve the Tesseract or the Cosmic Cube to get their hands from Thanos. And so when the Tesseract dropped, Loki picked it up and then he was transported to another place in time. And so he ends up meeting the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and he ends up meeting variant versions of Loki's himself, and then he ends up meeting a female counterpart, Sylvie, which is pretty much a reference to Amora, to the modern day Enchantress. But they will become tag team partners, wrestling term. They will become tag team partners, and they will try to figure out who's responsible for messing up with the time. So they'll eventually meet up with He Who Remains. Now, He Who Remains is actually a variant of Kang the Conqueror. And Kang the Conqueror is one of the most, I would say he's probably one of the top villains in the Marvel universe. I would say he's up there next to Doctor Doom, Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse, so many other well-known villains and well-known names. So Kang is up there as far as like dealing with the top of the villains. He's mostly a main villain for the Avengers, and he's also a main villain for the Fantastic Four too. I know there's another variant or another version of Kang where he's actually Reed Richards' father, Nathaniel Richards. So, but when Sylvie actually kills off He Who Remains, kills him off, it's supposed to set the motion to the whole multiverse expansion. So that's actually what caused the catastrophic of the whole multiverse. So it's intense. And then of course with Spider-Man Far From Home coming out in December, it's pretty much going to be even more extraordinary. And it's already been confirmed that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are going to reprise their roles as their respective Spider-Man. Not to mention the villains such as Alfred Molina, who's going to reprise his role as Dr. Octopus, and Willem Dafoe is going to come back as the Green Goblin. Jamie Foxx is going to reprise his role as Electro. And it's going to be incredible. Now, I will say this, for those of you that hasn't seen Venom 2, it's really good. I saw one of my good friends, Alan, shout out to you, my bro, and I was going to actually get him involved in one of my videos in the future too, along with everybody else too. But we saw we did see Avengers Endgame with one of my friends like 4 years ago, but we did see Venom 2 a couple nights ago, and it was great. And the post-credits, please stay for the post-credits. I beg you, stay for the post-credits. I've seen all the Marvel movies over the years, and I've seen every post-credit from the end of the movie, and I always sit there and stay because I know something's going to happen to the point to where the story's going to continue, and it's mostly shocking, and it's going to blow your mind. And I'm not the kind of guy that spoils everything because I, for one, hate spoilers myself. And it's like, I like to be surprised and like to be like, mind blown at the same time because it's what keeps the suspense for me. I'm a suspenseful person. You know what I mean? I'm a nice guy, but I'm also a suspenseful person at the same time because I like to be shocked. I like to be surprised because I want to know, like, what's going to happen next? Like, what type of story is going to take place and what's the action is going to be like who's who, what's what, why this happened. It goes back to the questions and the statements, who, what, when, where, why, and how, so it's just one of those things, So with Venom 2, it was great. I enjoyed it because they took elements from the 1993 Marvel arc, Maximum Carnage, and Woody Harrelson did a fantastic job as Cletus Cassidy. And with the other movies that he's played over the years, like, I can think of a better actor that can pretty much portray Cassidy like Woody Harrelson. And of course, Tom Hardy did a really good job with portraying Eddie Brock as Venom. So it's like, that's a given too. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. And then the post-credit scenes, all I have to say is that Spider-Man Far From Home is going to be awesome. And if you guys have any questions about, Venom 2, just comment below. But I would definitely I would definitely hold on to your seats for that one because I'm sure most of you have saw my timeline already and what the post-credit scenes was like. So all I gotta say is that, yeah, I've always wanted to see a tag team of Spider-Man and Venom because in the comics they would team up together on so many different occasions where they put their differences aside and put on the common ground. Even though in the issue, Spider-Man actually first donned the symbiote, and once Spidey rejected the symbiote actually resented Spidey for rejecting it the first time. So that's the reason why I went to Eddie Brock. You know, in the comics, he was a disgraced reporter from the Daily Globe, and then when that didn't pan out, he started hating Spider-Man because Spider-Man basically being framed because of the story that he was writing about when Spidey went up against the Sin Eater. And so when the publisher found out that Eddie fabricated the story, he was fired, and he actually developed hatred in his heart towards Spider-Man. And when the symbiote met with Eddie Brock, when the two come together, they say when the two shall meet, it's either going to be like this or it's going to be like madness repelling each other. So that's pretty much what happened. So Eddie Brock and Venom, they synchronized, they had a common goal, and they became Venom. And so he ends up becoming a lethal protector and an anti-hero eventually. So Spidey and Venom have teamed up on several occasions against Carnage. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Far From Home. I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's going to be great. I'm also looking forward to seeing Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That's going to be a good one too. So, and apparently from like I was saying when Eric Voss was talking about there's going to be more multiverse crossovers and multiverse shenanigans and Multiverse of Madness and Wanda being involved too. That's going to be pretty interesting too, you know, dealing with the Scarlet Witch and everything. So also, I'm going to show this too. So this is not for the faint of heart. The first 80 years, the true story of pop culture's phenomenon by Marvel. This is actually a must-have. I definitely recommend this too. This is basically going to deal with all the issues of the different ages from the 50s all the way to the 2010s. So this is actually pretty good. This is a good one too. I'll show you guys a snip of it. Like right here, this is the issue where Peter Parker was going to give up and stop being Spider-Man. And elements from Spider-Man 2, when Sam Raimi produced it, it took elements from that too and practically had their own spin to it. But Peter was losing his powers because he was being discouraged about trying to live a dual life of being Peter and Spidey, and then almost losing the girl of his dreams, Mary Jane, to the son of J. Jonah Jameson, astronaut John Jameson. So, yeah, but this is a good one too. Oh, yeah, and of course, Conan the Barbarian. This is a good one too. Yeah, he's actually one of my favorites. As a matter of fact, Jason Momoa and Arnold Schwarzenegger, they did the character justice. I'll give him credit for that. So he's actually one of my favorite characters too. So yeah, and then we also have, of course, the appearance of Luke Cage, and he would end up becoming best friends of Iron Fist. They were formed Heroes for Hire, and they were pretty much similar with Misty Knight and several other allies as well. And there's Shang-Chi. Let's show that too. Shang-Chi's right here too. And then there's Ghost Rider. So it's actually pretty cool. The Punisher's first appearance as well is in here as well. And then there's the first giant-sized X-Men too, which I had that issue. It's a classic. And of course, this is the Celestial right here. And considering that the Celestials is coming out in November, they're going to definitely do more of the... Actually, as a matter of fact, the mutant variant actually is supposed to take place in the Celestial. So, with the Internals, you're probably going to get a chance to get a sneak peek of what's going to be the first introduction of mutants. So, that's going to be pretty cool too. As a matter of fact, there was also an Easter egg in the scene of Venom to where Shriek actually does mention mutant, that her powers was mutated. So, and back then they could never use the term mutant because, you know, Disney and 20th Century Fox, they were owned by, of course, two different entities. They weren't separate. But now that they're all in one setting now, and Kevin Feige calls the shots, and they're in one setting, you can pretty much say mutants now because eventually Kevin's going to introduce the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the MCU. It's just a matter of time. So, yeah. So all I got to say is what time to be a Marvel fan. So, yeah. Oh, and check this out. This is actually a cool pic of Wolverine. And of course, it's got the settings from the 80s too. So, yeah, this really awesome pic of Wolverine. And, yeah. And also, here's Captain Marvel right here. This is actually her first appearance. Monica Rambeau. Of course, Monica was in WandaVision too, so this is actually a good interpretation of Captain Marvel, and she did a good job too of the character from WandaVision. So she's one of my favorites. I've been a Captain Marvel fan since I was a kid, so it's really cool seeing her in the MCU. So that was actually pretty cool. And it's only a matter of time when we will get a She-Hulk series too, and that's actually in the works because Mark Ruffalo is going to reprise his role as Bruce Banner the Hulk. So it's going to be cool seeing his cousin Jennifer Walters in the series too. So yeah. Oh, by the way, I was going to say I was talking to a former bodybuilder. She was actually Miss Olympia, Corey Everson. She told me that she was actually supposed to play She-Hulk in the 80s when they were working on it, but they never got through to it. So yeah, because we were both talking about like Marvel heroes and everything like that. So, but yeah, she's awesome. So yeah, I've been talking to a few celebrities on social media and stuff like that. So yeah, it's those connections, man. but yeah, this is pretty cool. So yep, this is the media right here, the media team. You got Stan Lee and his compadres right there, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, and that's Firestar, of course, right there. Firestar and the action figures. Like basically, Marvel always sells their action figures. So and this is my favorite one right here. Yeah. I love the Clone Saga. They pretty much never give the Clone Saga any justice. Especially the original one, but the 90s was pretty good too. But there's been like a lot of talks about how it was kind of catastrophic because during that time, Marvel was trying to go through their sales. And of course, this is during the 90s. And DC killed it when they literally killed Superman in the 90s. And so Doomsday killed Superman, and then their sales skyrocketed too. And Marvel was trying to compete, and so they actually redid the Clone Saga such series. And you know what? The Scarlet Spider is actually one of my favorite characters. I like Ben Reilly. If anything, I would pretty much consider Ben Reilly my spirit animal because, he's a great guy. He has good intentions, and, he's pretty much what Peter Parker is, but he tries to be the moral compass of everything. So, but yeah, this is a great book, though. I definitely recommend it. I mean, Todd McFarlane had his hands in it, too, especially writing some of the earlier Spider-Man issues, too. Like, right here. This is actually Todd's right here. Of course, he would go on to create another character from Image Comics called Spawn. So, but I'll get to that in the future as well. But, yeah. And then, of course, the 2000s right here. Oh, yeah, this is actually, it's pretty sad right here. This is just basically a retelling of what happened during the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and Spider-Man's reaction after when the trade towers were destroyed. And recently they've celebrated the 9/11 anniversary of, the people that have lost their lives and even the people that have lived on after 9/11 or those who've still had family members that they've lost during 9/11. So, yeah. And then, and then of course it was actually dealing with Rudy Giuliani when he was mayor at the time in New York. He did a cover of Moment of Silence, and that was actually pretty cool. But yeah, this is pretty much a great book. I definitely recommend it. So yeah, they have this in every bookstore, especially at Barnes and Noble. You can find it at your local bookstores, or if it's local, anywhere. It's easy to find. So they should have a copy of this. But yeah, this is a must-have. So. But yeah, guys, if you guys have any questions or any feedback for me, just let me know. I'm going to do more reviews in the future, especially with the movies that are out. I'm going to just, do like reaction videos and everything. So, but yeah, if you guys have any questions or feedback for me, just comment below. Let me know what you think. and I'm definitely going to do more of these in the future. I love doing reviews. The last review I did was of Kong versus Godzilla, and that was pretty good. I've gotten some good feedback from that too. But yeah, but like I said, guys, if you have any questions and feedback for me, just let me know. I can take constructive criticism really well. So, but just let me know what you think, and you guys continue to love each other. One piece, one world, one love, and I'm gonna definitely. Oh, you know what? I actually got that quote from the Falcon and Winter Soldier. The Flag Smashers, their quote was, "One world, one people," which is what we all are. One world, one people. So, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, just let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace and love.